In this episode of Careers That Matter, I'm joined by Bettina Balcaen of Studio Balcaen Kwan. Bettina, welcome.
Thank you.
What exactly is your job?
I wear many hats, but yeah, I'm a small business owner and architect.
So are you primarily a small business owner or are you primarily an architect? And I ask that out of a genuine question because, like, I'm a small business owner, but I'm also and I don't know which I do more of. Like, it's a really interesting mix.
Yeah, I think now we've been in business for around 8 years. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. We've kind of, had different ideas, I think, in the beginning of like what size of business and where we would go. But then now I think we really like to still be architects first and foremost, and then business owners. So we kind of kept that to sort of that 25% business owner and 75% architect, I would say. And that is doable because we're like a small firm. I think if we find the bigger we get, it is kind of like becomes then more sort of a management and business owner role. And that's not the reason why we went into this field.
Huh. I say congratulations when you say that you're at 8 years. The statistics are that out of 100 businesses that start by year 5, only 10 of them are still in business. And by year 10, only 10% of that 10, which means that 1 or 2 people get through, or organizations get through to the 10-year mark. And you're already at 8 would mean that you've kind of figured out a whole bunch of those things and you're moving along. And it's great that you've been able to identify that you want your workload to be shared sort of like 75% actually doing the business, because that is what is your calling card, isn't it?
Exactly.
Being an architect.
Exactly. That's what we want to do.
What do you love about being an architect the most?
It never gets boring because every project is a prototype and there's many different phases. So, we sit at the desk, but then we also go out to site or site visits and, visit manufacturers. So there's this variety of skill sets that you need to have and the switching of scales and putting different hats on. And I like that variety, that it is not necessarily repetitive.
As you say, visit manufacturers, I'm going, like, I wouldn't have thought about it, but as soon as you say it, I go, oh yeah, that makes sense, because you have to understand what it is that they're making and how functional it is and how it might fit into a design that you're wanting to put together. That must be a fascinating part of like the development of any kind of project.
Yeah, I guess one of the professors that I had in university said that we're generalists. We need to be able to know just a little bit enough to have that conversation and then try to understand the basics of many things. And then, some architects then also specialize in certain areas. And the more complex the building typology gets, then also the more specialized the teams are getting. And then if you want to be that generalist that likes all aspects of the work, then I guess that limits you a little bit on working on smaller scale projects where you're able to see it through all aspects of the work.
So are smaller scale projects where you and Tillie, your partner, focus your attention?
I think so, yeah. Because we do like to be involved in all aspects. And we have recently completed like a 10-story high-rise building with 133 residential units and I think, 6 or 8 commercial units. And that was a steep learning curve. And then we also said, oh yeah, that was interesting. And if we were to do it again, then we probably would also limit it to the, up until building permit, the design phase, because there's also a huge production leg involved where it's good to have a bigger team. And there's just like the volume of work that needs to be handled by a bigger project becomes then a bit challenging if you're a small firm.
Well, and then that exactly starts to take you away from that 75-25% ratio. You're now having to manage a team that's doing this. You can't put all of your energy into it yourself. And so I think it's so important that you identify this is the kind of firm that we want to be. And then that helps to guide you for the kinds of clients and projects that you're willing to take on.
Exactly, because I don't think that, when I went to university, I was thinking that I would manage like deficiencies for I don't know how many weeks on end, and kind of just talk about basics of what was drawn, and then it wasn't executed. And even though I reminded you during the construction process that you need to fix this, and you decided not to, and then we start arguing about that. So definitely want to minimize and work with a team where that gets valued and that we're on the same page and try our best.
So did you always know that you wanted to be an architect?
No, I actually didn't.
Didn't?
I didn't. No.
So when you graduate, now you're not born and raised in Canada. You were born in Germany, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
So as you're graduating from what is the equivalent of high school here, what did you think you wanted to do with your life?
I was interested in sciences, and then thought, I maybe, I would become, I was like a researcher, or work in the pharmaceutical industry, or become a biology and chemistry teacher. I always kind of liked the aspect of sciences. And then my parents, they built their house just before I graduated from high school. And so I was old enough to join these meetings with the architect and thought that was very interesting. And during high school, we also had to do like a 3-week practicum. And I did that in a lab, and I was like, it's interesting, but also a bit boring, because I would do the same thing every day to prove a certain, stat works. And I thought, I don't know, that was a bit boring. And then, it's sort of like witnessing and being part of that process, I became aware that profession exists, because before, you don't really come across an architect on a day-to-day basis. And then that kind of manifested more. And then I applied for architecture school and really enjoyed it.
So where'd you go to architectural school?
I went to architecture school in Darmstadt. That's just 50 kilometers south of Frankfurt and a little bit north of Heidelberg. And so that's sort of the heart of Art Deco city, and as a university city, and has this technical university that back then had sort of a really good reputation for their architecture program.
Okay. So when you're there, what's the length of the program there? Is it very similar to what architects, the educational experience there, similar to here in Canada?
I would say it's actually quite a bit different. So I did my undergrad and master's in architecture. And then back then, like an undergrad degree didn't really mean anything. It's something half-baked. It wouldn't get you a job. So it was for sure that you would continue with the master's program at the same school. So I have the undergrad degree in architecture and urban planning, because we also did some urban planning projects during our studies, and then continued with the master's program.
So how long is the total program? So
they kind of suggested 5.5 years, but it took most people 6 to 7 years, I would say.
And did you start to work in the industry as you were going?
Yes, exactly. That was also part of the program, that we had to do an internship in the undergrad program and also during the master's program. And then it got longer. That's also how I came to Canada. We had to do like a 6-month internship in an office. And then I applied for a grant and wanted to go to an English-speaking country. And I came to Vancouver and did my internship here.
Oh, with the Canadian firm.
With the Canadian firm, yes.
And so then that led you to applying for permanent residency and so on.
Exactly. So I did meet my future husband here, but I had to go back to Germany to finish my degree. And, it's just beautiful here. But that's how it all started.
So you arrived in Vancouver. Where did you first start working when you come to Vancouver after you've graduated?
I applied to many firms, and also a family friend who was a principal at an architecture firm. He actually was generous enough to have a talk with me and asked me all these questions, like, what are you interested in? What do you feel like doing? Do you have any areas of expertise? And then I just say, no, like I like everything from sort of dealing something small to planning cities, because that was part of my thesis. And then we talked about who does what in the city. And then, I don't know, when you graduate from university, I find I was also sort of, you're like in your 20s, you're full of yourself. You think you know things better. And then I was kind of like, urban planning. I think urban planning here is kind of like a bit backwards, like there's in the 80s, 90s. So And then he suggested, oh, why don't you work for a small firm? Because then you'll get to know everything and see, what you like. So I sent out all these resumes. Actually, no, I did go from door to door back then because I felt it would be good to kind of drop it off with the receptionist. I had a nice little flyer, a short portfolio. And there wasn't a lot of response. There weren't that many jobs available. And then after a little bit, there was a small firm that I didn't plan to apply for, but they were at the same building as a bigger firm, and they were really nice. And we talked about Darmstadt because they traveled there, and there was this personal connection. And then I got invited for an interview. And so there I had my first job with a very lovely small firm. They moved to West Vancouver. They relocated their office. But, it was the best first job experience that one could ask for.
So how important was your own persistence in looking for work and your ability to be able to finally get that position that then opened up doors to your future?
I think that it was also fluke because it was really kind of not planned for. And it was just trying to get an interview with dropping of the resumes. I only got that one interview.
Okay, I hear it differently than you do. You're saying that you were planning on going here, you weren't looking at that. But if you hadn't been going after this, that wouldn't have presented itself. And to me, I think this is an important thing, especially for anybody who's trying to build their career. You do a whole bunch of things and you hope that you're going down this path. But by virtue of the fact that you're there, it opens up other opportunities. And when you're a small business, of course, you're moving towards things. But because you're staying there and you keep going for it, that then also opens up opportunities that you may not have been thinking about, but they then come to you. They wouldn't if you hadn't been there. That's kind of my point.
Yeah.
Because I think it's an important distinction that people understand. Yeah, you just keep going, you keep going, you keep going. And so you enjoyed working in that boutique firm. Is that where you met Tillie?
No. So I really enjoyed working there, and it was sort of the perfect job.
Yeah.
But then it was also this is my first job. It would be also nice to see something else and maybe work on bigger projects. They focused also on smaller scale residential projects. And then one of my coworkers, he switched earlier and I guess left that firm and started working for another firm, and then they had an opening. And so then I followed him, and that's then where I met Tillie. So I worked for also the same small boutique design firm Tillie worked for.
And he reached out to you because he appreciated the quality of the work that you do.
Exactly. And there was a good fit and job opportunity coming up.
There's this great expression, earn tomorrow. And you earn it by the quality of the work that you do today. You earned that job because somebody else had witnessed what you were doing. And that's when you met Tillie and then went on to form your company. And you say that was 8 years ago. What was that process of deciding to say, okay, we're going to go on our own? Because it's a big, bold leap. What was that process like?
I think it was actually spontaneous. I don't think that we planned it or knew about that.
That's the best way to do it. Go in with eyes shut. That's why you start thinking your way through it, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, I think so too. So you're absolutely right. A friend asked us for some help in design advice, and we did that together. And I kind of thought, that it could be kind of fun. And we also, I guess it's sort of a question of confidence. I guess you then after years of experience, there is this confidence that we could do that on our own. And then I think that we started talking about it over coffees, and that kind of then grew slowly. And then we also thought about all the ifs and this and that, and then we decided, let's just go for it. And we got a project. We were, contractor recommended us, and so we already had this one project, and then that was sort of the final call to give notice and start our own practice.
So what have you learned about yourself that has led you down this path to the success that you are today? What's something you go, I didn't know that I had this ability, but I do, and it's important in what I'm doing.
I think it goes back to what you said, that kind of not giving up, just to keep going. And when you tell the story, it all sounds very glamorous. When I tell it to friends or family and I said, look, it's not that glamorous. We all cook with water and salt, and, you just need to keep going. And there's a lot of unglamorous moments, but if you like what you're doing, then just keep going.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you for giving us a glimpse into your job and your career paths.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Anthony Originello, CEO of the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources for BC and Yukon. We represent more than 8,000 members, and as the organization dedicated to advancing the HR profession through education, advocacy, awareness, professional development, as well as our recognized and impactful CPHR designation, we are proud to be a sponsor of this show. We have been the voice of the HR profession since 1942. Learn more about us at cphrbc.ca.